There's been a lot said about Adam Fuller after FSU's loss to Wake Forest. What about that is fact? What's fiction? And what have the first 5 games of this season told us about FSU's defensive coordinator and the job he's doing? Guys, thanks for watching the video. I appreciate you guys' support. I appreciate you guys coming back. We'll try to make this a quick one. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button below me. I do feel like the comments are going to be raging on this one. So with all the talk surrounding Adam Fuller, we really want to look at the question today. Has Adam Fuller been effective enough this season at Florida State? Let's get into it. Saturday against Wake Forest, Florida State faced one of the tougher offenses that they'll see all season. Between Hartman's abilities, the slow mesh, and injuries along the defensive line, the recipe for a loss was there, and the cake was baked in Doak Campbell's Stadium on Saturday. But it doesn't all fall on the defense. At the end of the day, the Noles probably did enough and got enough stops to win the game. Wake scored on 3 of its 5 first-half possessions. A penalty and a missed field goal ended their other 2 drives. Got a little lucky with that penalty, I will say, because Wake did convert on the 4th and 1, but a penalty nonetheless stopped the drive. Florida State had its own share of penalties that stopped their drives too. Sometimes that happens. In the second half, Wake scored on 2 of their 4 possessions. 2 sacks ended the 2 non-scoring drives there. Conversely, FSU scored on 1 of their 5 first-half possessions. 2 punts and a fumble in their own territory, as well as a missed field goal, were the results of their non-scoring drives. In the second half, they scored just like Wake did. 2 touchdowns, had a punt and a missed field goal, but tied Wake in points in the second half. FSU's defense wasn't great on Saturday, but it wasn't the biggest issue. Minus the fumble by the offense and the missed field goal in the first half, FSU likely goes into the break down 14-10 at worst, instead of 21-7. The final result may not have changed, but the defense wasn't the main reason the Noles lost. We knew Wake would score. We didn't know that FSU's offense would sputter. Looking forward, not much we can do with that Wake game. Flush it, hope the team responds, but I want to talk about Adam Fuller as a coordinator. His philosophy works at times. It did really well against LSU. The bend don't break mentality drives fans crazy, and it will for the rest of the time that he's at Florida State. But the idea is bend don't break. Play 2 high safeties, don't get beat deep. An elite quarterback like Hartman, though, probably the best quarterback you'll see the rest of the way, is going to take what the defense gives. And with injuries along the front of the defensive line, to Verse and Lovett, guys that are out, this was a field day for Hartman. And it just sucks, but it is what it is. I don't want to make this comparison. I don't want people to get upset because I think this coach is very highly regarded, but I think he coaches in a similar way to Stoops at Kentucky. For a moment, let's walk down that road, and let's compare the two. Mark Stoops and Adam Fuller. And let's say that they do have similar coaching styles and similar coaching abilities when it comes to defense. I don't want the mentions blowing up. I don't want the comments blowing up with me making this point, but let's just suppose that that's the case for just a minute. The reason I wouldn't compare him to Stoops right away is that I'm not sure that he can recruit at the same level. Something that stats don't really bear out, but Stoops had Jimbo recruiting for him in his absolute prime. If he's equal to Stoops, but he can't recruit as well or can't get as much talent as Stoops got in, it's going to be insufficient. Our total defense right now is 33rd after playing the best offensive team on our scheduling. So he probably gets this team to finish around a top 25 defense in the nation. If they can hold pat and not lose too much as we have our 2 hardest offensive games the next 2 weeks against NC State and Clemson, I think they will finish around that top 25 mark. They get to play teams like Georgia Tech and Louisiana and Miami who struggled offensively, and I think they'll be fine. Goal at the beginning of the year was to have a top 25 defense, and we're essentially on schedule for that as the schedule lightens up very much in the back half. Somewhere around that 20 to 25 mark is probably where your regular ceiling is going to be. And a top 20 defense, a top 25 defense can win you a lot of games. It's not going to win you championships, but it can win you a lot of games. An uptick in recruiting could potentially get you into that top 15 range. Maybe he breaks into the top 10. He's always going to drive the fan base crazy with the philosophy and the way that he coaches, but that's where you're going to see things as long as he's your defensive coordinator. I think for him to end up being retained long-term, it does come down to a recruiting uptick. It comes down to getting more talent in. Florida State has progressively gotten more and more and more talented as Mike Norvell has been here. But are we able to recruit in that 5 to 15 range where we probably should year in and year out? In that situation, I think you're looking at a pretty typical top 15 to top 20 defense at Florida State going forward. In this NIL era, we would probably consider ourselves, I think Ingram Smith of the Nolecast has kind of mentioned, in that 7 to 15-ish range. Well, if we can recruit in that range consistently, then I think we can continuously see a top 15 defense going forward. If at the end of the year, Adam Fuller is able to field a top 25 defense, it's proof of concept on everything else outside of recruiting. Unless we see some melting down and things go completely off the rails, we're on schedule for that. We're supposed to see that. And that's what I think we will see if we can get a couple of guys healthy, if we can stay healthy at other positions, and you do see some of the young talent come in and start to make differences. Has Fuller been effective enough? To this point, to be determined. Is he on schedule to have us with a top 25-ish defense in the country? I think so. And I think that if we would have asked ourselves at the beginning of the year, hey, does top 25 cut it for the Noles this year? I think we'd have all been fine with that. I think we would have all accepted that, and I think we'd have all welcomed that. Let's see how these next two games pan out, where Florida State will be challenged offensively against two good defenses in NC State and Clemson. Let's see how he holds up there, and then make a determination what we think the second half of the season will look like. Right now, a lot of this hinges on recruiting. Guys were in position on Saturday against Wake Forest. You had guys that could have knocked balls away on big third downs late in the game. You had guys that could have knocked balls away on jump balls in the end zone. They were in position. They were right there. Just couldn't make the play. You had two of your best defensive linemen out. I don't know that you blame that on Fuller. I think that some of his concepts are always going to drive the fan base crazy. I think there are things that people are going to hate to see. But for the most part, this defense has been effective this season. I know that we're all ready to jump off the bandwagon this week because we lost one game. Let's see how the next 2 weeks prove out with quarterbacks that are good, but are not at Hartman's level. Let's see what NC State looks like. Let's see what Clemson looks like. Let's see if there's an uptick in recruiting. If there's an uptick in recruiting, I think Fuller's system can work. See, my ideal defensive coordinator, I don't know. We'll see how the next few weeks look, how the years coming up look. But I think with the uptick in recruiting, I think we can consistently deliver a top 20 defense, and I think that's something that all Noles fans will be happy with. If you enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think about FSU's defense right now? What do you think about the scheme? What do you think about the coach? What do you think about the players? Let's talk about it in the comments. Happy to respond to you. Happy to try and get your thoughts in as well. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Go Noles.